In the previous set of exercises, we went through and did some work getting the standard hierarchy. And I wanted to show you where on the menu path we can go to our standard hierarchy to look at it and to modify it if needed. So if you go through accounting and then you come into controlling, cost center accounting, master data, standard hierarchy, and OKEON is the change. You can see that I actually added it down here, so you can add this to your favorites. And you want to make sure that your standard hierarchy looks like the one that's here with all of these activated and ready to go. If it doesn't look like this, you're going to have to go back because you probably forgot to put in Appendix A if you only have a few of them up here at the top. You want to make sure you go back and create those. The next thing that we're going to do, and I'm going to collapse this back to the main SAP menu bar, is we're going to create primary cost elements. Do you remember what primary cost elements do? If you said, oh yeah, the primary cost elements are associated with the general ledger accounts, you'd be exactly right. The primary cost elements are the way that we have general ledger data flowing over to the management accounting side of the house. So for each general ledger expense account, every one of them, every general ledger expense account is associated with a primary cost element. Now, there are other types of accounts that don't flow over, but expenses always will flow over to a primary cost element. So every general ledger expense posting in financial accounting would automatically post to the primary cost element once you set this up. And then you have to decide where that cost is going to go. So we already set up the cost centers. Cost centers are a good example of an account assignment object, something that you assign the cost to. Now, general ledger accounts are not a cost assignment object. General ledger accounts get the original entry, but then we have to assign the costs to something in the management accounting side. So items such as the cost center, a profit center, or an internal order would either get costs or revenues depending on what it is. So how are we going to get into the primary cost elements? We're going to click on the transaction SPRO, our favorite little place for the customizing that we're doing or the configuration. And we're going to click on the SAP reference IMG. We're going to go into controlling. We're going to go into cost element accounting. We're going into master data. We're going into cost elements, creating cost elements, and then we're going to, in the choose activity, click on create primary cost elements. In here, we're going to create the cost element for labor. It starts with a 7 and has 5 zeros. Remember, we had set up the general ledger accounts to be 6 digits long. The cost elements will be pretty much exactly the same numbers as what the general ledger accounts are. That's generally in practice the way that we would set those up. Now we're going to put in the current year, the first day of the first month of the current year, and we're going to click on the enter button. Once we get this up, we're going to change the name to our number and labor, and the description would be the same way. Now we need to click on the cost element category so that we can determine what it is. And this is a primary cost or cost reducing revenue. So we put in a 1, and you're going to click on the save button to show this message, which you want to write down, which is cost element has been created. Cost element has been created. Now we created the labor primary cost element in this step above. The Appendix B is going to have the other primary cost elements that we're creating. Now, you don't need to follow along this if you feel comfortable to do this, but I'm going to go ahead and create the rest of these. And if you are not wanting to cover these or you feel comfortable to create them on your own with the Appendix B, you can do that. But I'm going to go ahead and create the rest of these. So we're going into the create the cost elements. create primary cost element, and we need to create all of the ones that we have here. We're going to create cost element 720,0000. We're going to do valid from, and this should enter in appropriately. We click on the enter button, and really all we're putting in is the last 2 digits of our ID. If we can fit it in there. So you might have to change it a little bit to bring up the, oh, there's supposed to be a T here. Some of these things where if it has to be exactly perfect, it's not the end of the world if you forgot the T. I'm not worried about that part of it as much as I am worried about, have you done the configuration correctly, and are you looking at it and learning a little bit more about the system than you might have had otherwise. We're going to click the message again, and you should get the message cost element has been created. Now, if you run into problems again, I would just check mark each one of these that you got that message, cost element has been created. And this is going to be very tedious to watch this, but cost element created. Now we're going to do it for 720,100. And most of these we're just putting in our ID so I can see that you created these. This is the finished product consumption expense. This also is a primary cost or reducing revenue, and that's a required field that you have to have in. Click the Save button. Now we're doing 720,200. Click the Enter button. Oops, I put the wrong one in. So we got to put in 200. And we're going to take this off the back end. So you can see the system sometimes protects you from yourself when you make a mistake here. So we're going to click the Save button, and you should get that message again. Cost element has been created. You want to write that down. Then you're going to create another cost element, creating a primary cost element of 720,300. This is going to be the semi-finished consumption expense. What do you think you're using these for? What you're using these for is production. You're going to have raw materials moving over to production, and so this is important that we make sure that we run the transactions or run the financial activity over to the management accounting side of the house. We're now going to click on that same cost element category of 1, and that looks good. So we click the Save button. We'll create another one for 740,000. We'll put in supplies expense and our number in front of the supplies expense. Primary cost or cost element category of 1. Click the Save button. Write down your message. Pause if you need to write the message down. And then we're going to click on the green check mark again. We're going to click on create the primary cost element for 740,300. This one's rent expense. We're going to put our numbers in front of these. Cost element category of 1. Click the Save button. You'll see I'm going really, really fast, just trying to get these done. You can write down your message, which is at the bottom. Create the primary cost element of 741000. Now, you could do this in a range of numbers if you wanted to, but we're just giving you a little extra practice with the system. You can thank me for that later. But anyway, so we've got this primary cost for miscellaneous expense. This is a primary cost element category. And you keep getting the message that the cost element has been created. It is important to make sure you have all of these, because if it's required in a previous step, then you're going to have it here. The next one is utilities cost, 741,500. This is our utilities for electricity and the phone. What kind of cost element category do you think it is? You got it. It's the utilities expense. Cost element category, I'm sorry, it's the utilities expense cost category is also the same one that we've been using, which is primary cost reducing revenues. Click the Save button. And you should get the message again, cost element has been created. And then we're going to create another one. Now this next one is a little bit different. This one is related to manufacturing output, and we'll see that the cost element category is different. MFAC output settlement. I'm trying to make sure I write this correctly here. Manufacturing output settlement. Put in our little ID. Now you can see this is external settlement. So this is getting settled when we have manufacturing output. What does that mean when we have external settlement? That's getting settled outside of the management accounting system. External settlement means financial accounting. It's going over to financial accounting. We're going to click the Save button, and you should get the same message. Cost element has been created. We'll create another one, which is 741,700. This is our settlement variance. We're going to put our IDs in here too. We'll put in 88 here. Cost element category of 22. Click the Save button. So now we have all of the Appendix A items completed here. Next, we're going to go and create the secondary cost elements. So for the secondary cost elements, we're actually going to stay in the same place. I'm going to back out so we can just double check that we're going in the same place. But we're going into the reference IMG. We're going into controlling. We're going into cost element accounting. We're going into master data, cost elements, create cost elements. So yeah, we're in the same place within the screen. In the choose activity pop-up, we're going to click on create the standard or the secondary cost element. So what's a secondary cost element? If you said a secondary cost element stays on the management accounting side and is different than the primary cost element because it doesn't correspond to a general ledger account, you'd be pretty much right as far as what it is. Secondary cost elements reside only in the controlling module. That's where they like to hang out. and they're used for allocations and settlements between and among cost centers. We're going to create one for called 800,000. So we're going to put in 800,000. The first day of the current year. If it doesn't populate in, we're going to click enter. Now for this one, we're going to enter in labor allocation. And this cost element is internal activity allocation, which is 43. Click the save button, and you should get a message that says cost element has been created. Now you need to move to your Appendix C to create the rest of them. If you're comfortable with how you created this labor allocation account on your own, then you don't need to watch this demo. But I'm going to keep this demo here in case you are wanting to look at it to see how this is done. We're going to create the cost element for assessed costs next. So we're going to enter in assessed cost on both sides. For the cost element category, we're going to put in 42 because this is related to an assessment. After we're done with that, we're going to click the save button, and you should get the message again, cost element has been created. And you should get that message after each one of these that you do. We're going to create another secondary cost element, which is internal settlement. Now, if you wanted to, you could reference one from a different area. Such as GL00. Actually, oh wait, no, I don't know which one it was there here. Oh yeah, NA00. You could copy from this if you wanted to, and you can see that this information would populate in over here. It could populate in, and you can see that even the cost element category is here. So we'll create this one with reference to the other one that we did. Of course, we need to get rid of some of these digits so we can enter in the 88 or whatever your numbers are that you want to put there. So we can also copy from reference if we want to. Make sure your cost element category is correct and click the save button. You should still get the message cost element has been created. Cost element, the next one we're going to do is 800, 300. We're going to enter in production settlement. And the detailed description is production order settlement. So what do you think the cost element category will be here? It's going to be 21, which is internal settlement. So with production settlement, that's an internal settlement that's going to another part of the company. So we're going to click the save button, and you should get a message, cost element has been created. You should get a message that says cost element has been created. We're now going to click again to create another secondary cost element for 800, 400. Why don't we copy from the other one that we have here, NA00, just to save a little time. We're going to put in our last two digits, EAM cost, and then 88 EAM cost allocation. The cost element category should be 43. That should pull in. That's an internal activity allocation. We click the Save button. And now we're going to do 800, 500. Oops. I'm trying to copy from one. Put in NA00. Oops. And this one is EAM settlement. We're going to put in our last two digits under both of these. You'll see on this EAM settlement, this is an internal settlement. So we'll click the Save button, and you should get the message that says cost element has been created. Create the secondary cost element of 800, 600. We can also copy from 800, 600 if we want to. NA00. And the customer service settlement will enter in 88, or the last two digits of our ID. Cost element category is internal settlement, so this should always be your number, even though I sometimes say 88 just because I'm saying what I want to enter in. I don't want to mess that up for myself. Cost element has been created. You can write that down again. Create secondary cost element for 800, 700. We can also enter and copy from one if we want. For service labor, we're going to put in the last two digits of our ID under both of these, both the name and description. And then for the cost element category, we want to make sure it says 43 for internal activity allocation, which it does. We click the Save button, and you should get that same message. Cost element has been created. Our last one is going to be cost element 800, 800. Let's go ahead and copy from one of the cost elements that's already out there. We're going to take out the assessment here and put in our last two digits here. Customer service labor assessment, we'll put this in here. And we'll put in assessment and click the Save button. And you should get a message that says cost element has been created. You should get a message that says cost element has been created. Now let's just go look and surf over in our accounting tab and look at cost element accounting and see with our cost elements. You can also create cost elements over here on the SAP main menu page. So let's just add these to the favorites. We can also look here and see these cost elements and create or change them in this area. Now, probably the one that you might need to use is KA00. Let's say we want to go into 800, 800. Let's say we wanted to add our initials here so we know that we did this. We can just click on here and make that change in this area.